clearly, Bitcoin is a great hedge against inflation. When we look at the deflationary impact of the various technologies that around which we have centered our research, we think longer-term deflation and creative destruction associated with disruptive innovation, that's the bigger risk. And when you think about Bitcoin in those terms, you're thinking about a hedge against counterparty risk. So if we're going to have this debt deflationary bust that some still worry about out there, you've got Bitcoin as a hedge against that. So, it's, as an investor, whenever I hear win-win, I usually don't believe it. But as it is very interesting to watch the equity markets, or the investors in equity markets, treating Bitcoin and other crypto assets like they are treating the rest of tech, which is not very well of late. And to see the holding behavior in the Bitcoin community, I think is it 70% of the Bitcoin outstanding, so roughly 13.5 million units of the 19 are in long-term holding hands, so more than 6 months. So the community gets it, and my fellow investors will get it with time, but in the meantime, it's going to be a very nice ride.
We're in the year, right, 2022, where people are going to start to realize that not supporting Lightning is like not supporting the internet, right? If you don't support Bitcoin, you don't support sound economics or integrity. But if you don't support Lightning, it's just kind of like cutting yourself off from the internet. And it's so much so that you start to think that I don't want to do business with a company that doesn't get on board with Lightning. Like, I got to find another vendor. And I'll tell you another exciting thing about Lightning. I'm really excited about the speed and transaction velocity. I'm excited about the interoperability everywhere in the world. I'm also excited about what Lightning Labs announced this week with their Taro protocol, because if we can move USD stable coins at the speed of light over the Lightning network, then I think the killer application in the world is going to be when 6 billion people, maybe 8 billion people, when your 3-year-old's got it, when 8 billion people run around with a mobile phone, with an Android or iOS app, and they've got a Lightning wallet, and that wallet has got some BTC in it as a store of value, and it's got some USD or Euro or CNY or whatever as a medium of exchange. And then you're going to see tens of trillions and then hundreds of trillions of dollars all moving on Lightning rails secured by the Bitcoin network. And then people are going to wake up and realize, holy crap, this stuff really is going to change the world.
I often, when we're trying to impress upon investors how important this movement is, what I usually say is, okay, listen to this, and listen to every word, because every word is important. Bitcoin is the first global, that's really important, as Michael said, private, now it's open source, but there's no government involvement, so private. So first global, private, digital, rules-based monetary system in the history of the world. It is a very big idea. Yeah.
Any form of money moving at any frequency instantly anywhere in the world over Bitcoin, right, is such a beautiful vision. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about capital markets. I just think we've made enormous progress. 18 months ago, MicroStrategy bought $250 million of Bitcoin. People thought we were crazy. And everybody said, well, you bought it, you're not gonna buy any more, and when are you gonna sell it? And then it promptly traded down, and we were down $50 million, and people were dancing on my grave, gleefully speculating about when the board of directors were going to fire me. And then we finished a Dutch auction, and we bought 175 million more, and I thought, well, I got it 20% cheaper, why wouldn't I? And then people thought, well, you're going to stop. And then we didn't stop. And then Square, now Block, bought Bitcoin. And then Tesla bought Bitcoin. And we bought more Bitcoin. We're up to 6 billion Bitcoin. By the way, if you want to turn 250 million into 6 billion, buy Bitcoin. Don't buy gold. If I bought gold, I would have had $250 million worth of gold instead of $6 billion worth of Bitcoin. So when I say it's a lever and it's a ladder, I mean, yes, it's a ladder. So now at the end of, right about now, we've got 24 publicly traded miners. We got another dozen public companies. We've got $100 billion worth of assets flowing in this economy. Investment banks are doing deals, they're doing ATMs, they're doing convertible debt, we've done junk bonds, we've done all sorts of things. And I feel like the capital market's coming alive. From my perspective, Kathy, 24 months ago I went to Merrill Lynch and I said I want to buy Bitcoin. They laughed at me and said, not only will I not sell it to you, we're not allowed to talk about it or we get fired. Like, okay, well, then I wired like $175 million out of that bank and I went somewhere else. And you know, I think the victory lap here is now my inbox has Bitcoin research from Merrill Lynch sent to me by the same broker. Like, we're covering it now. This is what we think. So every bulge bracket firm is starting to cover it. They're all grudging that they're going to start to trade it. It's coming. And you've got all these publicly traded companies that are leading the way. I'm interested in your perspective as an investor. How do you see the capital markets and their attitude toward Bitcoin today versus a year or 2 years ago?
Well, it's improved, but it's a long way from being fully accepted, embraced, and so forth. What we're seeing with Bitcoin and traditional institutional investors is the same thing ARK is seeing about all of our strategies, associated with all of our strategies. They're very volatile. That's scary for institutional investors. There's no index. They're not in my index. So, this would be very risky to get involved. This is a new asset class, and we don't even know what the regulations are. So we're seeing a lot of pushback still that way. But as many of you may know, in our Big Ideas 2022, which is at ark-invest.com, we have a price target in 2030 for Bitcoin of more than $1 million per Bitcoin. And yeah, see, even you can't believe it. I expected a big roaring no, but and if you go in and you'll see how we build that case, we see institutional investors, all we expect over the next 8 years is that 2.5%, roughly 2.5% of assets, institutional assets, are allocated to Bitcoin. So we don't need a lot. And if it's more than that, and that's how institutional investors work. They tiptoe in. In the 70s, it was real estate. In the 80s, it was emerging markets, 80s and 90s. And now I think it's going to be crypto starting with Bitcoin. And that's very important, starting with Bitcoin, because they understand what it is and what it's not. It's not a securities. Nice.
So we got to wrap it up here. But I leave you with two thoughts. One, whenever I meet with very powerful people, politicians, senators, Congress persons, governors, or whenever I meet with billionaires or CEOs, what they say to me is, my daughter or my son said you're a rock star and I have to meet you. Okay? And they're like, I had a guy come to my house. I met his son, and the next day the son brought his father, and his father could like buy the entire city of Miami. And he said, well, I don't know what's going on, but I know Bitcoin is really important, and my son says I got to sit down and listen. And so I orange pilled him for 2 hours. And I'm not going to say who, because it's such a common story, but my point here is every one of you knows someone. Go tell a CEO, go tell your father, go tell your mother, go tell somebody that Bitcoin's going to change the world and they should figure out more about it, because the number one thing you can do is educate the world on Bitcoin and let people know they need to figure out Bitcoin. And every one of you does make a difference, because I would never get those meetings if it wasn't like someone that went and said, you got to pay attention. And my last point to you, you do not sell your Bitcoin. Thank you.